Hey all, I wanted to give you a quick update on the Roads and Highways synchronization UI. There have been quite a few changes since we showed it last week, specifically with regards to the site exchange and getting new site information into Jackalope. We had to make quite a few changes, like with the look and feel of things, to make things flow a little bit easier. And since that kind of makes our training that we did last week a little out of date, I decided to do this video and show you the new stuff. Basically, what hasn't changed is you're still using a little mini version of Jackalope 2 that will be installed on your system. Currently, we're doing it in our test environment, the JIA test. And so you will access Jackalope 2 by first logging into Jackalope 1, like you normally would, to do the things that you need to do. There are some specific roles that you're supposed to have, and so if you do log in and you have a bunch of access denied kind of errors, just let us know or let someone there know, and we will make sure you get the appropriate roles assigned to you. Once you have logged in, across your normal Jackalope thing here, you will have a new button. This is our Jackalope 2 logo. You can't really see it that well there, but it is, trust me. Let's move you back there, and then this will open up the Jackalope 2 window. You will log in, you will just see this home tab, and you'll probably see a whole bunch of widgets here. The only widget that's going to work, because again, you guys have the little mini version of Jackalope, you don't have the full version, is this widget here, the recent and bookmarked menus, which you can, if you just want the one, you could just disable everything else and keep that one there. And then what you just have to remember where the Roads and Highways lives the first time, which is under Site Admin, and then the top menu there, Roads and Highways. And then once you do that, this star right here controls whether or not it's bookmarked. I just unbookmarked it, and then so you would want to bookmark it, you would see it here, and then you don't have to remember where it is here anymore. You can just always, when you log in, you'll see this thing here with the one menu in it. You can click it, and poof, there you are. Oh, bummer. I meant to clean. Hold on. Small. I don't want to restart, so I'm going to do a little cleaning here. Sorry, pretend that didn't happen. Maybe I'll do some editing magic and get rid of that part. I wanted to start from a fresh thing, and that is not fresh. Okay, when you get into Roads and Highways, it's broken up into multiple sections. It's broken into this top part here, which is sort of the scoping part. This allows you to decide what you're going to be working on, and so you could be working in traffic sites or traffic intersections. For this demo, we're just going to be looking at traffic sites, but traffic intersections work exactly the same way. And both of them do need to be synced in order for your count season to progress, because in the future, potentially, you're going to be doing the same thing you do with intersections that you do with your traffic sites, and have them sourced from the ArcGIS endpoint first, and then read into Jackalope every year before the count season starts. Okay, so we're just going to be looking at traffic sites, and again, you just have the two, just sites and intersections. And for sites, these are the traffic site fields that are synchronized back and forth, or from Roads and Highways. So most of these are probably familiar to you. The most important one in terms of scheduling is this count year field. So if you just wanted to work with count years, you could do that. And because count years are what will schedule a particular site to be counted in the appropriate count year. So all the rows up in the Roads and Highways currently have 2026 because that's what this year is. In the future, of course, they'll have next year's going on. Okay, we're just going to do them all for now, though. In terms of the site scoping, which is this last one, it could be system-wide, which means you can do everything, and normally probably this is what you'll do unless you wanted to just focus on a particular area or a particular type of count. You could just synchronize that, and yeah, or you could do it by site group. If you have any interesting site groups created that you want to do, you can do one by one individual sites here, and I'm not going to go into various ways of selecting sites, but we've made it a little bit easier in Jackalope 2. We're going to do this one because Peter Peterson, Newton's a good city, and that's what we're going to do. So we're doing filter, which means we get to pick any of our site fields, and we're going to say the city contains the word Newton, and we've got a bunch of sites in the upcoming count season that will be counted. Okay, but we're not going to do that yet. Okay, so did I reset? Yes, I did. We are going to reset. We're going to restore here. Okay, so that's the scoping field. This is telling you what you're going to be working on. The majority of the time is probably going to be system-wide. We're going to just look at the whole system. And again, you're going to do traffic sites and then traffic intersections. Down here, I just cleaned out, so there aren't any last scans, but this has a history of every scan that's ever been done and all the audit information, like the user that did it, when they did it, and stuff like that, and what was done. You know, was it traffic site or traffic intersection? All right, the next section down there is the Action UI, which is new. This isn't something we saw last week. I can't draw circles. That thing. Actions is where we're going to start our journey here. And so we made it a little bit more obvious what you should do first. So you start with number one, unsurprisingly, by discovering new sites. And we are going to do that now. Hit that button. The background job gets created, and it's going to go out there. And the discovery phase is where it's trying to discover whether any new sites or intersections, if you're in intersections, exist in the cloud that don't exist here. Basically, the process is, check for new sites / intersections in the cloud, make them in Jackalope, and then you can sync the other fields. So once you have the site in Jackalope, you can synchronize fields between roads and highways in Jackalope. This doesn't take that long. I was hoping to babble long enough that it would be done, but no such luck. Again, you could hover here. We did add a little bit of help. So if you do get lost, if you're in here like, what the heck are all these buttons? You could do that. So yeah, first step is discovering new sites. And then second is, currently the second is start scan, but we're about to get a different button right here. If the discovery finds new sites, then the next step is to actually insert those sites into Jackalope. Blink. Open. Okay, still running. And so this is where you do the things. There's those other additional things we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And then we'll talk about statuses and resolution. I'm going to probably do the magic of video and skip this part, so you're not going to hear these fabulous words. Okay, we're back. The site scan is complete. We found 719 new sites that exist in ArcGIS that do not exist in Jackalope, and now it's time to do something about that. So the discovery found the differences. Now we have this new button here called New Sites, and we have 719 of those bad boys. You can click on New Sites here, and if you wanted to, you could look at them all. In Iowa, all of the sites required fields like functional class, factor group, things that a site has to have. In order to be a viable site in Jackalope, number of lanes in each direction, stuff like that, are actually synced over from roads and highways, which is very convenient, which means that if that weren't the case, you would have to go one by one through each of these 700 sites and enter in the additional mandatory information. Like, for example, if number of lanes wasn't part of our scan, which it is, you'd have to go through, select them all and do this option, which is the labor intensive, create these sites manually. It directs you through, a set of dialog boxes to get the job done. You'll get this box no matter what, whether you do it as a batch or through the manual, which is we're showing right now. The effective date of the site, so when did this site get created, I would think, and that corresponds to this date here, the initial date that this site started existing. Probably that would be the first of the year, I would guess. You just have to enter this part once. Oops, not two. I'm typing, but you of course use the little control thing. And then, give it a description, and that's the part of, sorry, I shouldn't have closed that site. That's the hover thing here. So when you hover, you get a history of changes and the description and who did it. That's the description bit right there. So by default, it'll say imported from roads and highways. And then you would go one by one through each of the sites. It will go through and pull the information from roads and highways and populate these various fields that you will all see here. So you guys don't have to go through this part. I'm going through this just to kind of show you can. If like, for example, if you wanted to override something that was in roads and highways, you could do it here. But normally you wouldn't want to do that. Normally you would just do the batch, which is just easier. So clicking on new and just selecting all and hitting batch import for all of these sites is the better way to do it. You again have to pick the effective date, and this effective date will be used for every site, each of the 719 sites that will be added to Jackalope. Same with the note, same note for every single one. I'm not going to hit continue here because it does take a while. It takes about, I think, an hour and a half is what it takes. I also don't want to mess up your test database. I want there to be no sites in there for you to play with. So you guys will go through and hit the batch, select a date, and then hit continue here, at which point, it's just going to sit there and turn for a really long time. And when that's done, you will have new sites in Jackalope, and that you can have scheduled for the current year. I'm going to go ahead and do this city because I don't want to do a full scan of the whole state. When you hit this scan button here, or do what I just did, which is get to it by going to the scope. Actually, I'll just do it this way. I'm just going to hit cancel here. I picked Newton City, so there's just the 300 or whatever sites. Normally, you would hit start scan, and this is the third step of our process. You've created these 719 sites, and now we're scanning. And normally, you would do a full system-wide scan, but I don't want to wait for it. There's nothing to do here anymore. There used to be other options. We removed them all and have different ways of doing the same thing. And you guys don't have the as of date, so you can't really click that. You can run the scan. This won't take very long. Alright, we are back, and then when the scan is done, then you can finally see stuff down here. And this is where you use your gatekeeping skills to decide whether you actually want the changes that are offered from your roads and highways endpoint. If the answer is yes, I don't care, let's just take everything, which might be the ultimate thing that you do, you can do that. There's a way to do that. But let's just go through this as if we're not going to do that. So basically, every one of these fields has been scanned and compared between Jackalope and roads and highways, and there are potential differences out there, like, I don't know, county name. This isn't a difference, it's ambiguous. So basically, each of the rows has one of, well, 5 different statuses. It could have compared the two and said, oh, roads and highways has a west for positive direction for this particular site, and Jackalope has an east. That's obviously a difference. If in that case the status is there's a difference. These purple ones are where more than one row will come back for a given query, and normally we don't want that. Like, there should only be one match when we do the query, but in these cases there's 17 ambiguous ones. You can see what the ambiguity was. If you click on the purple thing there, you can see, oh, well, one of them returned this text and the other one returned that text, which look to be identical. So then you might ask yourself, well, why do I even have to worry about that? And the answer is you don't. So there's this auto resolve button. Normally that might be the next thing you do after you do your scan. After you go through 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, is you just automatically resolve the ones that are identical. Like axle factor group for this particular site, look to be the same to me, and then the same thing there. So auto resolve will basically go through, and if they are the same value, then it'll automatically disambiguate those, and they get then they get reevaluated. And so if after disambiguating them, if there's still a difference, it'll get added to that one. Actually, it's either that or it'll get unchanged. I think all of those were unchanged. I've done this before. And so now we're just stuck with 44 that are different. And you could resolve those manually, and this is just that one city, so when you do the scan there's going to be a whole lot more. And so how you do that is, I guess that's sort of knowledge that you would do over time. If you just say, I don't care, let's just do it all, you would select everything and you'd hit sync, and sync means I want the value that's in roads and highways to be pushed into Jackalope, which is probably normally what you'd want to do. That's usually, and so you can do that in all of the cases you see here. In fact, you can do that on all of these cases. Where it fails is if roads and highways is blank and Jackalope is not blank, then it will not actually copy the blank. It will not overwrite a valid Jackalope value with a blank roads and highways value. But aside from that, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We're not going to do that. Did I see something weird down here? Hold on. Yeah, it was 0. So the number of positive lanes changed here for this site. That site, it's North 19th Avenue and East, yeah. So let's pretend like that's not valid, like something is wrong in roads and highways. If that's the case, then what you don't want to sync it, obviously. You don't want to override a valid site's, one thing with a 0, right? I don't know if that's truly we went from a one-way or two-way to one-way. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But if it isn't good, then you would go over here. You would either select it and whatever other ones you wanted to not deal with, and hit add to the ignore list. And when you do that, oops, it went away because ignored by default are not shown. So if you're trying to do what I'm doing, which is see what we just did, make sure you select ignored. And now you can see the resolution's ignored. And when you hover over a difference, either here or here, you get this hover, And so as a general rule, hover while you're over the thing, but as soon as you move your mouse, you lose that, which you can overcome by clicking. So now I've clicked, you see the little green box around the thing. Now, it's locked there until I click somewhere else. As a general rule, that in Jackalope 2, that's true. And at this point, we don't care, but we're going to do this. We're going to ignore it, and then let's go ahead and scan this and see what happens. There's an option when you click over here to requery this from roads and highways, and so it's going to go ahead and do this site/field again, and we have to click ignore it on again. And so now, as we, I'm going to click there. So now this is a history of all the things that we've done at this particular site for this particular field, number of positive lanes. We did our original scan, and then there was a difference existing. In Jackalope, we had a 1, and roads and highways, we had a 0. We're like, we don't want to overwrite what looks like a valid 1 with a 0. And it would, by the way, the exception I mentioned earlier was about a blank or a null. A null will not override a valid Jackalope attribute, but a 0 it will. A 0 is not a null in our opinion in the way the code works. So this, if we had synced this, our Jackalope site would have had 0 lanes in the positive direction, which probably isn't correct. I don't know. Anyway, so this is a history. So we first did the scan, we got a difference exists, then we added it to the ignore list, and now we scanned it, and what happened is it ignored it, of course. That's the point. And then, every time a scan happens, this number of positive lanes will not give you a difference exists. It'll give you this ignored, which you normally won't see because you're not looking at ignored rows normally. Unless one of these two values change, like if this went, like let's say it went from 0 to 2 for some reason, the ignore would go away. And so then now all of a sudden so ignores only last as long as both attributes stayed the same. Alternatively, if Jackalope, went to a different number, it would also undo the ignore. Let's you can remove things from the ignore list. Let's do that. And now let's sync requery again. And now we would expect it to be a difference existing. Yeah, it's this one here, right? And now we've got a situation where if we didn't lock it, we wouldn't be able to see the whole history here. At some point, we're probably going to do something like only display, the last 20 rows or something like that of history, and just keep the rest in the database for archiving purposes. But in terms of history, that we don't want this to get too unmanageable. So we're going over the actions on this top thing here. We've gone over sync. If you want to sync these, you would select whichever ones you want to do and sync. And all of these are reproduced here in this menu here. But these just operate on whatever this particular row is you clicked on. So sync does that. Adding it to the ignore list is what we just did. If we have something like this, we're like, no, that's bad. I don't want to see that anymore. You would add it to the ignore list. Requerying is doing what we've also just done, which is let's do it again. Let's see what's there now, and maybe something behind the scenes required or changed, and you might want to query. You guys don't have this problem, but in Utah they have one layer. They're actually going to a national NGIS kind of layer for elevation, and so that each of their sites has an elevation, which they use for helping with determining what factor groups, like seasonal factor groups. Utah, you can imagine ski resorts all over the place, and how high a site is kind of is an indicator of how recreational it might be and how its seasonality might be determined. So every site in Utah has an elevation, but for whatever reason that layer is ridiculously flaky. Like 1 out of every 20 calls to it just fails for no reason, and so they get a bunch of things here in the arid state for their elevation calls. So they they just click on all the error, select them all, and do requery, and then mostly works. And it'll still fail every 10 or 20 times, but whatever. So that's another use case for the requery, is if something went wrong just because of a glitch of network, you will actually see an error here, and you would try. Your first step would just be to requery. Your second would be to actually see what query is doing, which you can do by selecting this menu again and opening this in Roads and Highways, which brings you to the actual Roads and Highways endpoint that we are querying, and the specific query that we're doing, and the columns that we're getting back. And so that is a nice debugging tool for debugging when things go wrong. So requery, and then auto-resolve we already did with the ambiguous. Auto-resolve only works if you have more than one ambiguous. Let's see. Boink, boink, boink. Make sure I've covered everything in my notes here. Yeah, so normally, I'm not going to do this because I want you guys to do it. As soon as I'm done with this video and I send it to you, I'm going to reset everything again. So you won't see 719 sites. You won't even see this window. You'll just see the Discover site will be the selected one, the one that you're supposed to do first. So you come in here, click that first, let it churn for a few minutes, and then this will show up, and then you could new sites, batch import, and let you do that, and then it'll import all 719 sites in Jackalope, and then this will be enabled. I mean, it's already enabled, but it'll be bold, so it's supposed to indicate that that's the next thing to do. You could scan at that point. System-wide scan does take a while. It takes like I said, like an hour and a half or something like that. So kind of something you do overnight maybe. And then you have the option of resolving stuff. And for testing, I would, sync some, don't ignore some, just kind of play around. So that covers everything. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions. When you get the email that indicates that, or with this video link, that'll be a YouTube video, at that point you're free to go. At that point we will stop resetting your database and you can just go crazy and do the things I just mentioned. Alright, have fun guys.